Welcome back. The next topic we want to talk about today is steps in the segmentation process. Everything begins with selecting a market or product category for study. So all of you have selected a company to study. Now what you want to take a look at is what market do they fall into? If they're into a nonprofit sector, then you want to start taking a look at all the other different nonprofit groups that they're likely to encounter. If they're in a for-profit sector, take a look at, let me go back to the nonprofits for a minute. Not only do you want to take a look at the nonprofit groups, but take a look at if there's any for-profit groups that would also compete with them, because you need to do an analysis of that group as well. If it's for-profit, take a look at your competitors. Now, the best way to find your competitors is think like a customer. Think like a customer, even talk to some customers, okay? And that's one of the things we're going to do later on. But what you want to do is ask them, you're trying to solve problem X. You're going out for dinner, for example, or you're looking to get a dog or a cat. What are your options? When you think about doing that, what do you think of doing as a customer? That gets you around the typical issue where we write down who we think of, and we might miss somebody, because competitors come in direct, and direct competitors are those that are pretty much doing the same thing we are. Indirect, people that are performing the same product or service, or delivering the same product or service, but they're doing it in a slightly different manner than we do. And then we've got the tertiary, or the unknown competitors, which consumers may have found over time solve their problem, but we would never think of doing it that way ourselves as the company delivering the product or service in a given way. So the key to this, talk to customers and find out what they're interested in. Once you've done that, you've got your market, which all of you have by choosing your company. Figure out how you want to segment the market. Is this a market that segments nicely based upon a demographic, a usage situation, the benefit provided? Is this something that fits into a geographic determination? What you want to do is figure out for you what's the best way to segment the market. Now, if you're a local retailer, whether you're a restaurant, a bar, or a clothing retailer, typically geography combined with income and one other variable are probably what you're looking for, because people will only travel so far to get to a retailer. And the more common you're offering, the smaller the distance they'll travel, or the shorter the distance they'll travel. If you're doing something that cuts across all sorts of lines, so it's a lifestyle, you're more interested in a lifestyle, but again, you're probably interested in distance as well, unless you're completely online. So you have to figure out what's the best determinant of how you want to segment your market down. Once you've got that, figure out the best descriptors. So figure out the top 3-4 things you want to use to describe your customer. Don't do, oh, they're between 18 and 55 and they're female. That's way too broad. You need to target down a lot more than that to come up with a descriptor for your market. So when somebody walks in the door, you've got a pretty good idea if they're going to be a customer or not. Okay, that's one of the first things you want to do when you're moving them through the sales funnel. Once you've got that, you want to start profiling and analyzing your different segments. Because markets, as I said in the last piece, aren't monolithic. They have different segments to them. So break down that 18 to 55-year-old group into much smaller snippets that really fit with what you're trying to do. Once you've done that, figure out the best way to get to them. And that's where we're going to start to use the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion. Okay? Now, there's a great chart in the book that really breaks down targeting, and it talks about 3 different types of targeting. It talks about undifferentiated targeting, it talks about concentrated targeting, and it talks about multi-segment targeting. Well, let's take a look at those individually, okay? Undifferentiated targeting says you treat everybody the same, okay? Everybody's a customer. That's kind of an old school thought. That goes back to, if you think back to chapter 2, when we talked about the marketing era, okay? What we're doing there, the big benefit of undifferentiated targeting is we save on production and marketing costs because we're saying everybody gets the same product. So when Henry Ford developed the Model T, it was a great example of an undifferentiated marketing approach. As he liked to say, you can have any color you want as long as it's black. All right? He didn't care about how much you made, what you wanted. He'll sell you a car, but it's his car, and it's going to be designed the way he wants it. Completely undifferentiated. The problem you run into, and Henry Ford ran into this problem, is it's pretty unimaginative. And consumers today want something that makes them stand out, so they look for a bit of imagination. Okay? The second thing is, if you treat everybody as this big market, well, guess what? If the market's like this, you can get attacked from all sorts of different directions. So for you, it's not the greatest way to set up. Now, the second method they talk about kind of goes the opposite way. That's concentrated marketing. What you do is you pick a segment you're interested in, you pour your resources into that segment, okay, and you go after it. What the beauty of that is, if you're a small firm, that allows you to compete with the big firms. Because if you go after what's called a niche market, and it's very popular right now, niche markets are very popular, you can do things that big firms can't, okay? So that allows you to get in and target specifically. It gives you a strong position in that market. An example of somebody who does concentrated targeting would be, Tesla. Tesla's a great example of somebody who uses concentrated marketing. They're really looking to find the consumer who's concerned about the environment and has a high enough income to afford one of their electric cars, and uses that vehicle in such a way that you're not going to tax the battery or prove one of the limitations of electric powered cars. Okay? And that's allowed Tesla to take on the big firms in the industry, like Mercedes, like GM, like Ford, and really dominate their particular sector. The problem with going after concentrated marketing is it goes back to that one of those 4 points I said you have to have. It has to be accessible and has to be measurable, and it has to be big enough. The problem with this is you may go into a market that's not big enough to support you in the long run, or you and a competitor in the long run. So you have to be very, very careful, okay? You may also find that large competitors can more effectively market to this niche by taking their ability and their cash to target it. Where we've seen that happen a lot is in the airline industry. They're what are called ultra low cost carriers. They use a very concentrated targeting. They're looking for people who are extremely price sensitive but aren't time sensitive when they fly. So they're not typical business travelers. They tend to be people traveling on leisure and on a budget, and typically with a family. The major carriers, United, American, Delta, whenever one of these guys comes into the market, whether it's Allegiant, Spirit, Frontier, Southwest is considered a discount carrier, but they face the same thing in their early days. The big carriers will often come in, add flights, add capacity. Their entire goal of doing that, now, by the way, they also cut their prices down to the same level as these new companies. Their whole goal of doing that is to push them out of the market. So we do see that concentrated marketing has its dangers. The market might not be big enough, and you may find a bigger player with all their resources can easily push you out. The last one is multi-segment targeting. Okay, what that allows you to do is go after multiple segments with a variation of your product or service for each segment. Great place to look at that is Arm & Hammer baking soda. That product is in multiple segments. It's in the traditional baking area. It's in odor protection. It's in teeth brushing. It's in deodorant. It's in all of those, toothpaste, not teeth brushing. It's in all of those areas. It's a very strong marketing segment. It allows them to get great economies of scale because they're producing the same product, they're just packaging it up differently for different market segments. And it allows them to effectively use their marketing because they can cross-market. The downside of multi-segment targeting is high cost. That now you're marketing in multiple segments, all of which require a new marketing plan, and you'll end up with a cannibalization as well. Is one of the other areas where you're stealing sales from one to another, from one segment to another. The last thing we can use is customer relationship management, or CRM. This is made incredibly popular and very possible by the increase in computer power and the fact that we now have sophisticated algorithms that allow us to track what consumers are doing. This is where we can collect those 18,000 data points I mentioned in one of the first videos, so we can accurately predict what a customer wants to do. The big things with CRM is we can personalize it. So if you've ever gotten an email that starts "Dear," your first name, your last name, and then gives you an email, that's a great example of CRM. They're pulling your information from one place, dropping it. You can do the same thing in Word, but this is much more sophisticated. The second thing we can do is time savings. Okay, what we do is by having customer relationship management is we move the consumer from maybe a low involvement purchase where they have to think about it a bit to that habitual purchase. So we save them time and we save them effort. Oh yeah, and we make money on it. So it's a great piece. The third thing is we generate loyalty. That consumers will become much more dependent on us and much more loyal to our offerings because they know what they're going to get. They know the quality, they know the price, because we're constantly reinforcing that through the CRM system. And if we do that, then we move them into that 20% crowd I talked about in the Pareto analysis, where we get most of our sales and most of our profits from. So we want that loyal consumer who buys from us without doing a lot of searching. And last but not least is technology. We have a variety of ways to use technology, whether it's mobile devices, your laptop, your notepads or your pad-based devices, email, text messaging, phone, regular mail. We have a variety of ways to reach you so that we can get to you at any given time as a consumer and deliver our message. Okay, that's the end of the section on how you segment a market. The next thing we want to talk about in the third section is positioning. So I'll be right back and we'll discuss positioning.